You already know it's an anything art. So let's get into one of the most important things when it comes to painting, which is choosing the right brush. Choosing the right brush can really make or break your painting. It honestly can, because there's so many different factors when it comes to a paintbrush. You have flat brushes. You also have flat brushes that are angled, and you have round brushes. So most of the brushes on the market, they're basically different variations of these brushes, flat brushes and round brushes. Now, let's break down the basic anatomy of brushes. So with the basic anatomy of every single brush is just the same. You have your bristles. So this is what you're painting with. These are your bristles, the hairs on your brush. They can be either synthetic or they can be actual natural hair brushes. Then you have the handle. So the handle is here. So we have our bristles. We have our ferrule. Our ferrule connects the handle and the bristle. So ferrule and then the handle. Now that we have the basic anatomy of a brush broken down, let's talk about each different part and what to look for when choosing the correct brush based off these three parts. Okay, let's begin with the bristles. So the bristles of your brush, like I said before, these are the hairs of your brush. They can be synthetic or natural hair. When you choose natural hair brushes, it gives you a very nice brush stroke, but I don't see a difference between the synthetic or natural, and also the natural hair brushes, they take a lot more maintenance. Now, choosing the right brush with the right bristles, I always look for the feel of the brush. It feels very sturdy, but not super stiff. What you want to avoid when looking at the bristles, you want to avoid brushes that are too soft. This one is way too soft. See, like, look how it just bends too easily. You also want to avoid bristles. If you look very closely, they're very uneven. And I bet if I touch it, I can pluck it out. Let's see. You see that? You do not want this. So I would definitely avoid bristles that are way too soft and they come out very easily out of the ferrule. And also bristles that are too sturdy or uneven. So we discussed the bristles. Now let's move towards the ferrule. With the ferrule, you have at the front, this is what we call the heel. The heel is where the bristles connect. And this is the crimp. With the ferrule, it's super important to make sure that you're choosing a brush where the ferrule is secured onto the handle. Because oftentimes, if you have a cheap brush, it comes apart very easily. With very cheap brushes, I think I've had this maybe for a month or so. And when I started using it, eventually it started to basically break off because it's a cheap brush. The ferrule is not secured on as tightly. Glue, whatever it is, it was not secure. So it kind of comes off just like that. Another cheap one. So be mindful of checking that. You can already look at this one. It's very secure. I'm literally pulling it, trying to pull it apart. Lastly, let's talk about the handle. The handle when deciding what brush to buy. I usually hold the bristles and the ferrule of higher importance when I'm looking at a good brush versus a bad brush. I just believe these two are way more of a deciding factor when choosing the correct brush. But let's talk about the handle. So handles of a paintbrush are usually made of either plastic or wood. And you can tell a good paintbrush often by looking at the handle and noticing that it does not chip. So if I scratch this, it does not chip. It has like a nice varnish on there as well. When you have a bad quality brush, you notice that it chips very easily. I can even go in and manually just start to chip it myself. A very good quality brush would not chip that easily. Now that we know how to choose the right brushes, let's learn how different type of brushes, flat versus round brushes, let's learn how they move on a canvas. I'm going to start with flat brushes. I'm going to start with my 1-inch brush or 1-inch wash. Flat brushes are really good to cover large surface areas. I'm going to dip into just a random color. I'm going to grab some blue. I'm going to go back and forth just like this. It covers large surface areas because it's so wide. Turn it the vertical way and drag it just like that as well. These were the brushes that I used, and these are also brushes I would recommend purchasing based on the bristles, everything we went over before, the bristles, the handle, the ferrule. Now let's talk about what brush strokes. Let's see what that looks like with bad brushes. Remember, we wouldn't choose a brush like this because it's way too soft. It doesn't have any type of sturdiness to it. Is just like very fickle. The hairs are coming out, but you see, let's see how it looks when we paint with that. So you see, as I'm painting it, I'm trying to press down on it, but there's gaps. There's some unevenness in there. It's way too soft. If I try to make lines, my brush is splitting, it's opening. So let's see. This is a brush that we would use because, again, the bristles are very nice and sturdy, but not too stiff and not too soft. It's just somewhere in the middle. So it gives us very nice and smooth brush strokes. Same thing with this one. These are all the brushes that we use with the blue. The angle one gives us precision. Now our bad brushes, they're way too soft. The bristles are very brittle. They're too soft. They don't have any type of shape to them. They give us uneven brush strokes. Round brushes, they give it this nice line of precision as well. It's really good for drawing shapes. And also, if you want to add some petals in there, they're great for that too. You got to press down and drag it out. This one is more of like a medium round brush. It's going to give me the same type of lines, except they are going to be just a little tad bit thinner. So here, adding some lines. We add some petals on there too. Now let's look at a round brush. That's a very bad brush that we should not be using. So I'm going to dip into my water once again, get it nice and prepped, ready to go. Wipe it off on my napkin over here on the side. And let's use our red. Okay, so this is a brush that we should not be using. As you can tell, once again, it's very limpy. There's no structure to this brush. Let's add on a line and see what happens. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is just a portion of my beginner's paint guide. Learn how to paint with acrylic paint the easy way. If you enjoyed this and you want to see the rest of the modules and more tips, visit itsanathanart.com.